Live from the heartland and the crossroads of America, it's Tony Katz Today.
The border is the biggest story in America. And how we have been covering it, the extent to which we've been covering it, the engagement that we've been giving it isn't enough. And yet it's far more than the vast majority of people in any level of media out there. We have talked more about the border, engaged more about the border, recognized the multiple facets of the border better than the rest. And everybody needs to come around to this. What's amazing is it is starting to happen. Not movement, not changes. Some people are still wholly political and completely intransigent. But as a subject, one that actually makes a difference in the 2024 election, oh yeah, it's officially here. Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. I'd love it if you'd head on over there, subscribe, be a part of what we're doing, support what we're doing. Let's start with Charlemagne the God, who's a radio host out of New York and syndicated. He does other media work, and he's doing an interview with Fox News Digital. Listen.
I have the privilege, man, of doing morning radio and speaking to working class people every single day. I have the privilege of being involved in my community from New York to New Jersey to South Carolina, where I get to look people in the eyes and have real conversations with them, and people are really concerned about this issue. Like I honestly have never spoken to as many people who are concerned about the migrant issue as I have over the past year. And I mean, I've heard everything from the gang MS-13 overrunning neighborhoods. I've heard what we saw just happened in New York City, where the migrants, they took 2,000 migrants and put them into school and made the school stay home, made the students stay home and do school via Zoom.
Now, he's discussing an issue about migrants. I need you to put that to the side, because that's actually a different conversation than the border. Yes, they connect, but how people see it is different. And if you don't know the story about the high schools, James Madison High School, you have these illegal immigrants and others staying in a field in New York, right? Kids, sorry, you can't play soccer here. We're going to put these people here because Texas sent them. The people coming across the border, being invited across the border, lying about asylum, they're not coming to Texas. They're coming to America. So New York, you're going to get your share. In Chicago, you're going to get your share. Martha's Vineyard, you're going to get your share, etc. So they don't have a place for them. They're overrun in New York, this sanctuary city. So they get put in a field, but the weather got too cold. So sorry, James Madison High School, you have to engage class via Zoom. We're going to take these people here illegally, and we are going to put them in the school. And when it gets too cold again, it'll happen again. So that's what he's talking about. But I need you to put the conversation about migrant to the side just for a moment. Remind me to get back to it. Let's talk about the actual border and the failures that have taken place under Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. When he says we need congressional action, I don't disagree with him. We do need congressional action, and we don't have it. But this is not to say that the actions taken by Alejandro Mayorkas are acceptable. They are not. They have allowed for more people to come through. It has been, while he's down there often talking to Border Patrol, it seems that it's a nonstop fight against Border Patrol. And at the second hearing today about his possible impeachment, Representative Benny Thompson, the same Benny Thompson who led the January 6th nonsense inquiry, stated this.
I wish my Republican colleagues would engage the Secretary to provide the department the funding it needs, but they have refused. I look forward to continuing to work with Secretary Mayorkas on critical Homeland Security issues facing the country and commend him for his unwavering commitment to duty even in the face of this sham impeachment.
Anytime the political right is involved in anything, it's a sham. His devotion to duty, what possibly are we discussing here? The border is far worse. The situation is far worse. The amount of contacts that Border Patrol is making is through the roof. There are areas where they are outnumbered 200-1, and there is no end in sight. Yes, you had Antony Blinken actually going to Mexico to beg for help, and that's how the trains got slowed down or shut down, where people were coming over by the thousands. Border Patrol is worked to the bone. The morale is low. They're just waiting for retirement. You're offering bonuses now to get people. Makes perfect sense. I don't have any issue with bonuses. It's very hard to get people when you won't let them do their job. And that goes back to Mayorkas as an appendage of the Biden administration. That is what cannot be denied. This is the conversation that we should be having. Instead, we get Vice President Kamala Harris on The View talking nonsense.
First of all, everyone knows our immigration system is broken.
Right.
Okay. The first bill that we dropped, the first bill that we offered right after inauguration was to fix the immigration system. A comprehensive plan to deal with the immigration system. Do you think they've taken it up? No. We want solutions. The solutions are at hand. But frankly, we're in an election year, and the folks who want to return Donald Trump to the White House would prefer to talk about a broken immigration system instead of focusing on the solutions that are at hand.
Say at hand one more time. Tell me the solutions are at hand one more time. The Republicans will say, we've got, what is it, House Bill 2? 1002? We're ready to go. Oh, no, that bill's racist, Republicans. We have enough blame to go around in both parties. The failures are epic. But utilizing empty platitudes like this provides no value whatsoever. Absolutely none. Yet that's all we get from this administration. Anybody who says comprehensive immigration reform is talking out their butt. They have no idea what they're talking about. It is just a catchphrase. But catchphrases are where it's at. And the administration is using many of them. When Karine Jean-Pierre is questioned by reporters because she's lying about where Republicans are regarding Border Patrol agents, getting rid of Border Patrol agents, defunding Border Patrol agents, you know what she says? We like the lie.
Thank you, Karine. Why are you repeating this false claim that Republicans voted to reduce the number of Border Patrol agents, even though the Washington Post gave the administration 3 Pinocchios for that?
So we don't believe it's a false claim. Our statements were very direct here. Last year, House GOP voted, and not only did they vote for it, but they touted their Limit, Save, Grow Act. That's the act. Well, limit,
and they vowed that it would never affect Border Patrol.
They voted for and touted it, right? This is an act. And this would have forced the elimination of 2,000 Border Patrol agents. That's what this act that they touted, that they voted for in the House. So that was their proposal, and that was what they voted for back in May.
The reporters are saying that's not what's in the proposal. It's not what Republicans are saying. And Karine Jean-Pierre is like, no, that's it. Lying. It's a flat out lie. And she's like, yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm down with that. Here, let me read from my binder because I have no ability or capacity to do this job, which she doesn't, by the way. Even Democrats are discussing the issue, discussing that the border is the problem and saying that Biden isn't doing enough about it. And it's not just John Fetterman, who the amount of people discussing, okay, we need to study his brain. He's a progressive. He's a near communist. He was a little ne'er-do-well there in Pennsylvania. He gets elected. He has a stroke, gets elected to the Senate, is recovering, and the next thing you know, he's making sense on the border. He's making sense on Israel. What's going on here? It's crazy, right? I'm totally with you. It's the weirdest stuff in the world, but he's making sense here.
Biden allies admit.
There's a crisis at the border, and I don't know how anybody could pretend that there isn't.
That's as clear and as concise as you can be. By the way, you'll note he spoke in complete sentences there. Clearly, he's better from the stroke. Now, he should never have been elected. He should have been given the time to heal. That should have happened at home. I said it. I meant it. I still believe every word of that. But of course, now you're seeing Democrats, more than a dozen in the House, formally rebuking President Biden. It was a Republican-led resolution. Republican-led resolution. That's not an easy one to do. Denouncing the Biden administration's open borders policy, condemning the national security and public safety crisis along the southwest border, and urging President Biden to end his administration's open borders efforts. Now, this is Henry Cuellar, Jared Golden, Mary Peltola, she's out of Alaska, and Jared Moskowitz out of Florida. It's symbolic, sure, but they're doing it. Why are they doing it? Well, two things. A, they realize that it moves their voters. And B, maybe they understand that Joe Biden won't be on the ticket, so there's really no harm in doing so. There's no harm. None whatsoever. He won't be on the ticket. Blame Biden. It's good. But this brings us back to what Charlemagne the God, this radio host, a popular, very popular host, is discussing about the migrant issue. We talk about the border as a matter of safety and security for the nation. When people bring up the migrant issue, they're saying, wait a second, this is affecting my life. A conversation about the border is in the ether. It is a policy conversation. It is a wonks conversation. Safety and security, that's happening over there. The migrant issue is these people are robbing people in the streets. They're taking over the schools. They're making my life difficult. They inconvenienced my wife, and I don't want to have to hear about it. So now you, politician, have got a freaking problem. That is how you know the issue is here to stay and absolutely will move the 2024 election. Democrats feel fine and comfortable with coming out and talking about it because they know that they've got to get elected. They don't care what heat they give Biden, maybe a question whether he'll be on the ballot. And the utilization of the term migrants as opposed to border, saying that this is personal. You understand that what Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, has done, he has made this subject, more than anybody, the front and center subject. We knew it was the biggest story in America. Now everybody knows it's the biggest story in America. There is no debate. It's the biggest story in America. Well, what happens? What gets done here? Is this the moment to the legislation? Because what I want is the legislation. What I need is the legislation. What I desire is the legislation that brings technology to the border, that allows for more Border Patrol agents to be hired at some higher numbers, that engages a Remain in Mexico policy, that discusses legal immigration for people who want to be workers. You cannot pick lettuce without these people. And if you think that that's some kind of dismissive thing, I'm telling you what the farmers say through the people I talk to. We don't have the workers and you need them. There is a labor issue here and an economic issue here. It is great. Thankfully, there are Democrats who are taking this seriously and serious about legislation to solve the problem.
To my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, let's be honest with immigrants who deserve better than what you're offering them. Don't welcome immigrants if you plan to reject them. If you keep pushing your bigoted H.R. 2 bill, then also pass this bill. I've taken the liberty of drafting it for you. It removes the Statue of Liberty, our largest symbol that tells people to come here. This is who you are, removing the fabric of America. So I want to know which Republican who supports and voted for H.R. 2 will introduce this bill.
This is the kind of seriousness we're going to get from the Democratic Party?
Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
This is the kind of serious? Your bill is so bigoted, you want to remove the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty is not policy. Colossus, the Emma Lazarus poem, which is at the bottom of the statue, is not policy. Give me, it's the new Colossus. I always say Colossus, the new Colossus. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, and it's breathe free, not be free. That is not policy, Congressman. That's Max Frost out of Florida, who's taking it on the chin for this. He actually had someone standing behind him with a poster of the Statue of Liberty, and then they flipped the page, and all of a sudden the statue was gone.
OMG. Are you kidding me right now?
It just disappeared.
Oh, God!
True story.
A vicious mother, isn't he?
Well, he's not very nice. You either want to solve the problem at the border or you don't. You either want to engage in legislation or you don't. And if Democrats want to be unserious about this, protecting Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and engaging in ridiculous stunts like this, go ahead. Go ahead. Meanwhile, people feel affected personally, and they're not going to vote for the people who aren't taking care of them and protecting them and their kids and their jobs and their businesses personally. It's the biggest story in America, and there are people on the left who still want to pretend there's nothing to see here.
Okay, people, move along. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah, those days are over. There's plenty to see here. This is Tony Katz Today. Of course, the big news about the Pacers today, the trade for Pascal Siakam. Oh, there's excitement all across Hoosierland. There is. The idea that the Pacers were willing to give up, to make a move like this, give up 2 first-round picks in 24, a first-round pick in 26, give up some players that I think the people like. Oh, this is a move the ground move. And what I have totally dug is that it seems that the fan base is totally in on this because it might mean more people coming, more players coming to Indiana and seeing Indiana as the place to play and win championships. I love that. I adore that. But before we get to any time to the playoffs, Indiana will again take center stage because of the NBA All-Star Game that is less than a month away. It's going to be very cool. Tony Katz, good to be with you. Danny Lopez joins me right now, Vice President of External Relations and Corporate Communications for the Indiana Pacers. Also, full disclosure, running for the State House there. And we just because I like full disclosure, that's a subject we are not discussing. We're not discussing his run for the General Assembly in Indiana. We are discussing All-Star Weekend. So much so, we're not even discussing the trade, which has taken over everybody's lives. Pascal Siakam and the trade for Bruce Brown and some first-round picks. I know this isn't your wheelhouse. You're not the basketball operations guy. But how good does the building feel after this trade?
I mean, look, here's a guy that can play on both ends of the court. He's dynamic. He's good on defense. He's exciting, all-NBA guy. I mean, if you listen to all the talking heads, I mean, it puts the Pacers in the top tier there in the Eastern Conference to be competing. So it's exciting. But I'd say this: how about Indiana dominating the sports news cycle nationally for the last week between the court at the airport and this trade yesterday? It's been a good few days around the building for sure.
The court at the airport, if you did not see or hear, there is a full-size regulation basketball court right now in the middle of the Indianapolis International Airport, right there in the middle of the food court area. Can I play on it? Can people play on it, or is it just there to look pretty?
So there's hoops up. You can't play on it right now. I mean, honestly, Tony, I think even we didn't anticipate the kind of reception that it was going to get. So, maybe we think about before it gets torn out, what we can do with it and make it interactive. But it's just cool for now to have it there. And it like I said, it dominated the news cycle. It's such a different element. And I think it's a good illustration of how we do these events in Indiana differently than other places. I mean, I remember flying out to Salt Lake City last year for All-Star game in Utah, which was fine. It was a good event, and it was just fine. But if you were in the airport, you didn't really know that you were in All-Star until maybe you got closer to the street level, and then there was some signage. But for us, whether you're at the airport or anywhere downtown, or hopefully anywhere in central Indiana with some of the signage, you're going to know that this event is going on. You're going to know that you're right in the middle of All-Star because we just do these things differently.
My suggestion is at the airport, an 8-team high school tournament. Just select 8 teams out of a hat. They all play down there. Winner gets a cash prize for the school. My suggestion, run up the flagpole, see if Herb Simon says yes or no. Talking to Danny Lopez from the Indiana Pacers, Vice President of External Relations and Corporate Communications. It's been a delay. Right? You had to wait a couple years to get your All-Star game. This should have been happening in 2021. Did the delay make it some great opportunities go by the wayside, or do you really feel that you were able to capitalize on the extra time?
No, look, the delay ultimately was a silver lining. I mean, we're always careful when we talk about COVID and silver linings, but the having the more time allowed us to organize differently, to pull stuff together that we weren't going to be able to do. I mean, remember that we won this bid in 2017 when Larry drove the Indy car on Fifth Avenue and hand-delivered the bid to the NBA. We planned for 21. The building, Gamebridge, would have been half completed, so you would have had, gray seats and green seats in the balconies, and it just wouldn't have been done. And so it would have been great, and it would have been a celebration of basketball and a celebration of Herb and a celebration of Indiana, but it wouldn't have been the same. Now you got a completed building, you got the plaza outside, and you're able to do this in a way. I mean, 21 would have been low touch, and it would have been all this other stuff that would have sort of taken a little bit of the luster off the experience. Now we're able to do things the way we were going to do them. We're planning on doing them, and so from that standpoint, it really actually was beneficial to us in the planning. And again, when you've got this many people involved, there's cities that don't even have host committees. We've got 400 people on this host committee, lots of volunteers, lots of people that are actively engaged. This wouldn't have been possible in 2021. So, I mean, from a lot of standpoints, I'd say it was a blessing that this thing got pushed back a little bit. But it has been 7 years. I think everybody's ready. We're within 30 days now. We're inside of 30 days. I think everybody's more than ready to get this thing going.
Talking to Danny Lopez of the Indiana Pacers. The whole weekend, walk me through it. Let's do the TikTok of events, both at Gamebridge and at Lucas Oil Stadium.
So Thursday night, we're going to actually, we just announced it yesterday, we're going to have something called Tip-Off. It's never been done for NBA All-Star, but it's essentially an opening ceremony that we'll do at the Plaza. And it'll be Thursday night at 6:30. We're going to put more information out here in a couple of weeks on where you can get tickets. It'll be free, but ticketed, obviously, because we have limited space out on the plaza. And then starting on Friday, we're going to you'll have the Rising Stars game, the Celebrity game. You'll go into All-Star Saturday night and practice and media day on Saturday, and then of course Sunday is the game, and then. The interesting thing about All-Star, which is a little bit different from, Super Bowl or any of these other major events that we host, certainly the NCAAs, is you have all these ancillary events that some of them are basketball related, some of them have nothing to do with basketball. So, we're doing something called Day of Service. So the NBA does a Day of Service every single year for All-Star. Typically it's an hour or two. The commissioner comes out, they invite some former players, they do some, backpack packing or some meal packing, take some photos, and off they go. Well, we turned that into 24 hours of service. So we're doing starting on Thursday at 4 p.m. and ending up on Friday at 4 p.m. We're pulling in 6,000 volunteers, which we'd love folks to volunteer. There's still some spots, particularly for the overnight shifts. And you can go to pacers.com/allstar for all of this and to sign up. But we're pulling in 6,000 volunteers. We're going to pack 1 million meals. They're going to be distributed through food banks all across the state of Indiana. So that'll be going on at Lucas Oil on the other side of the curtain from where All-Star Saturday Night is going to be held. So, there's just things like that. We're going to be doing something at Christamore House. We're going to be doing something at Crispus Attucks. I mean, it's just going to be a busy, busy weekend. You hit the nail on the head in the intro. There's going to be upwards of 125 to 150,000 people descending upon downtown. And one of the things that other cities we noticed a lot from previous host cities was a lot of sort of messaging around, it's going to be busy downtown, so you may want to stay away. We want people to come downtown, whether you've got a ticket, whether you're a fan of basketball or the NBA, just come downtown. It's going to be a party. There's going to be tons of things going on, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
One of the questions about what happens downtown is, of course, we talk about downtown often. And while I'm not looking to get a political conversation going, talk to me about safety and security for people who are coming to Indianapolis for the event.
So we've been having, for years now, we've been having a lot of conversations with IMPD and NBA security to ensure that, you've got a safety plan and a security plan in place. So I think from that standpoint, people shouldn't feel like, there's any security concerns or safety concerns because the planning's been done. And again, this isn't the first time that we do these large-scale events. I mean, if you think about Super Bowl at Georgia Street, I still have the photo up in my office of Georgia Street, and it was front to back, packed in like sardines. And it was safe. It was a safe environment. It was a fun environment. So we're less concerned about safety and security downtown because we've got a plan in place and it's going to be secure, and we're more sort of excited about what we can do with folks when they're downtown.
Danny Lopez of the Indiana Pacers, Vice President of External Relations and Corporate Communications. Appreciate taking the time to be with us. Looking forward to the weekend and looking forward to downtown making a crap ton of cash. That's
absolutely good economic impact. It's good for businesses downtown. It'll be a lot of fun. We may not have this again in most of our lifetimes. So come on out and check it out and just enjoy it.
Yeah, but I want those out-of-town people to spend all their money. Don't just enjoy it. Spend all of your loot. Danny Lopez of the Indiana Pacers, I appreciate you taking the time. More is coming up. I'm Tony Katz.
Do you believe the recent leak of material allegedly from Hunter's computer is part of a Russian disinformation campaign?
From what I've read and know, the intelligence community warned the president that Giuliani was being fed disinformation from the Russians. And we also know that Putin is trying very hard to spread disinformation about Joe Biden. And so when you put the combination of Russia, Giuliani, the president together, it's just what it is. It's a smear campaign because he has nothing he wants to talk about. What is he running on?
It wasn't a smear campaign. It was never a smear campaign. The contents of Hunter Biden's laptop, of course, legit. We knew this to be the case. The DOJ acknowledges that the laptop is real. The New York Post had the reporting complete. Of course they did. They had it all. They had it together. No question. They had it. But it was just a few months ago where Representative Dan Goldman of New York was trying to tell you, we don't know if that laptop is legitimate.
You've talked about the Hunter Biden laptop and how the FBI knew it existed. You are aware, of course, that the laptop, so to speak, that was published in the New York Post was actually a hard drive that the New York Post admitted here was not authenticated as real. It was not the laptop the FBI had. You're aware of that, right?
It was the same contents.
How do you know?
Because it's the same. I mean,
you would have to authenticate it to know it was the same contents. You have no idea. You know hard drives can be manipulated.
Are you suggesting the New York Post could participate in a conspiracy to construct the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop?
No, sir. The problem is that hard drives can be manipulated by Rudy Giuliani or Russia.
Well, what's the evidence that happened?
Well, there is actual evidence of it, but the point is
There's no evidence for it, so you're engaging in a conspiracy.
I'm glad you agree with me, Mr. Schellenberger, that transparency is the most important thing. And my last question for you is, do you think it would be transparent if Hunter Biden came to this Congress and testified in a public hearing, and more transparent than if he testified privately?
Literally, I've never thought about that. I have no idea.
You don't know?
Literally never thought about that.
Public testimony more transparent than private testimony?
Are you familiar with the First
Mr.
Amendment?
Chairman, I yield back.
Congress shall take no action to abridge freedom of speech. Yeah, and that's what you just described.
Mr.
Schellenberger does good work. Tony Katz today. So, as recently as a few months ago, they were still trying to tell us that this laptop was nonsense. There was nothing to it. And the same guy who was trying to tell us this is now wanting to push for a censure resolution on Elise Stefanik because of, wait for it, her rhetoric.
Now, Congressman, was the hostages comment that tipped you over?
It was sort of the breaking point, I think. Her rhetoric and support for the January 6th insurrectionists and for generally the conspiracy theories peddled by the criminal defendant Donald Trump have been ratcheting up. And it's one thing for a rank and file member to be saying those things. It's altogether something different for the number 4 person in the leadership of the House.
You lied about the laptop 3 months ago. Elise Stefanik is the problem because you don't like her politics. What a guy. I'm Tony Katz. This is Tony Katz Today.
What should the consequences be for Anthony Fauci? Jail. You know, I've sent 2 referrals to the Department of Justice. I think he lied to Congress, which is a felony. Several folks from the Trump administration were accused of lying to Congress and carted off to jail with FBI agents all over their property, yanking them out of their house early in the morning. But we have 2 tiers of justice here. It depends on whether you were a supporter of Donald Trump or you're a supporter of big government, the centralized government. But Anthony Fauci did lie to Congress. We know that from his own words, not because I say he lies, but his private emails say he was lying.
We should be perfectly clear that anytime Senator Rand Paul gets to question Dr. Anthony Fauci, it's a good day. It's a good day. Anthony Fauci is indeed guilty. No, he didn't start COVID, but he allowed the cover-up. He tried to sell us a bill of goods while refusing to admit that, yes, indeed, through his hands, funding went to the Wuhan lab in order to take a look at these bad viruses. That they were looking at and actively funding gain-of-function research. There is no debate here. Anthony Fauci is a disgrace. Anthony Fauci deserves all the derision he gets, and then some. China is responsible for COVID. Tony Katz today. 833-GOT-TONY, 833-468-8669. That is the number. Be a part of the show. It is a fact. It is proven. Hold them accountable. I'm going to start saying this on the regular, which is nothing more than we haven't already said on the regular, guys. We have said this time and time again. We knew without question that the idea that this was something that was going to jump from animal to human was a very, very, very big stretch. But we were willing, as rational people, to hear the evidence. But as rational people, we did our own research, and we saw evidence. We saw conversations. We saw data, and we went to go share that on then Twitter and Facebook and other places, and we were told, nein, which is German for we didn't approve that, and we weren't allowed to share those things. And doctors who had a different point of view than Fauci and his gang of head-nodding automatons. They said that those doctors weren't allowed to speak out. Those doctors were a danger. Those doctors were a threat. So we didn't engage rationally. We were told that we weren't allowed to engage at all. But we persisted. We were the resistance. See, I love it when you use leftist terms against the left. Makes me feel so good. We knew, we saw that there were questions about how this came to be. And I said at the time, and I still hold to it, that the objective, I believe, by China was not to send the virus into the world and kill everybody. What happened in China is that because they're communists, and all communists suck, and they are incompetent, except when it comes to murder. Oh, they're super good at murder and paranoia. They are so good at murder and paranoia. I mean, almost as good as Alec Baldwin. Too soon? No? Send your emails. I'm in a mood. I'm in a mood because the latest story is about the Chinese lab mapping COVID 2 weeks before they announced to the world that this thing even happened. I believe that the virus leaked from the Wuhan virology lab. I do not believe it was set loose. Now, we may differ on that, but I believe that to be the case, that it leaked because these the conditions, the systems, they don't have real systems. Remember, it's China. They don't build things, they steal things. The Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, that would have involved them actually doing reporting. The Wall Street Journal putting forth that Chinese researchers had isolated and mapped the virus that causes COVID-19 in late December 2019. This being 2 weeks before Beijing revealed details of COVID to the world. This, according to congressional investigators. So here's the data, and the New York Post has a pretty nice write-up about this as well. And you can find the piece over at TonyKatz.com under the heading "China is responsible for COVID," because China is responsible for COVID. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. A House committee obtains from them documents. Their documents are reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. And what it shows is that a Chinese researcher in Beijing uploaded a nearly complete sequence, this is how it's written, of the virus's structure to a U.S. government-run database on December 28th, 2019. At the time, China was describing what was happening in Wuhan as a viral pneumonia, quote, of unknown cause, unquote. But they knew. They only shared the sequence with the World Health Organization on January 11th, 2020. The same World Health Organization that wanted to tell us China did nothing wrong. Fauci's covering for them. The World Health Organization is covering for them. With friends like that, you can get away with anything. Now, the Wall Street Journal states it as follows, that the new information doesn't shed light on the debate over whether COVID emerged from an infected animal or a lab leak, but it suggested that the world still doesn't have a full accounting of the pandemic's origin. I look at it differently. I believe it tells us that they knew and they said, okay, let's see what happens. But while we're waiting to see what happens, let's buy up all the personal protective equipment and then sell it back to people at a profit. Let's not inform the world and be a partner. Let's not be rational people in a first world nation. Let us be the commie pinko, worthless animals that we are. Of course, talking about the Communist Chinese Party, not people. The people who have to live under this hellscape, they dealt with the same horrors. Let's not tell Italy as people are taking trips. Let's not tell the whole of Europe as people are taking trips. Let's not tell the United States as people are taking trips. Let's just see. Sorry, That's guilty. That is guilty. That is a level of obscene and despicable that simply cannot be overlooked. I only want to know what is the plan for holding China accountable. Now, I have stated before with clarity that the way to hold China accountable is to take the money back. This fraudulent nation that steals our technology, steals our intellectual property, and perpetrates this fraud that murders millions around the globe. You may not have gotten sick. You may have gotten sick and then gotten better. But it's clear, it is clear that COVID killed people. Let's not deny it. And it's clear that China did nothing to try and mitigate the situation. So I say, for the theft and for the murder, we no longer owe them any debt. People look at me like I have 7 heads when I discuss this. I want to hear why this can't happen. We owe China, let's say, how many billion it is. I don't think we owe them a trillion. Hold on, let's search it up. How much does the U.S. owe China? Let's see if we can get an answer to this question. Oh, it is. Well, this is from February of 22. No, that's like 2 years ago. Here is December of 2023. Japan holds 1.1 trillion. China holds $770 billion worth of U.S. debt. Well, that's $770 billion we don't have to pay back. You steal our technology. You have situations where people have come to visit China. One of the fascinating things about China is the way they do it is everybody can come. Oh, you can come into China, no problem. They don't keep people out of China. You can come into China. But if you want to leave, it's kind of like Hotel California. You got to answer a few questions before you get to leave. That's how they do it. That's how they hold business owners and executives quasi-hostage, getting information before you're allowed to leave. That's who these communists are. We take the money back. Thank you very much. Now, I argued at the time during COVID that we should take the money and we should use it to pay off the debt for all nurses and nursing students currently in the country. That was my take. We could just not have it on the debt rolls and lower our debt, and that's great. But let's take the payments that we make to them every month, and let's pay off the debt of every nurse who worked their butt off during COVID. You remember the nurses who were heroes until some of them said, I'm not so sure about the vaccine, and then they were villains and weren't allowed to be around children? Do you remember those nurses? Those nurses who put their lives on the line every single day? And then when they weren't so sure about the vaccine, they were told that they were witches and they should be burned at the freaking stake. Yes, those nurses. I remember them. And I think that's a great use of $770 billion. And then let's create funds with money that we were going to use to pay China. And let's pay for more nurses. Something tells me in an aging population, nurses might be something we need. I would say we need more doctors, but you're going to have to change the system that allows them to actually make a living again. Oh, poor doctors not making enough money. Wait till you can't get to a doctor, and then you'll realize, I guess Tony was right. Start by not paying China. Let them figure out what to do. It's the old line, when you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem. When you owe the bank $1 million, it's the bank's problem. I say we make it China's problem. I say we hold people to account. I say we get angry. I don't want to get into a fist fight. Let's be clear. I believe we can win a fist fight with China, but I don't think anybody actually wins that fist fight. It's one of the reasons why we got to keep building a Navy. But they don't get to own land in the United States. We take the land from them. Tony, that's not American. They're not American citizens. They're the enemy. The Communist Party of China. No land, no businesses. We just take it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Tell us we can't manufacture there anymore? Okay. Because we shouldn't be manufacturing there anyway. We'll manufacture in Vietnam. Seriously, Tony, another communist country? I can only handle one ridiculous threat at a time. Do you mind? All right, we'll build in India. Fine, you got it. And then we'll build some in Australia. Then we'll actually, you know what, I would say we would build a little in Canada, but honestly, not until Trudeau's gone. The place is just way too weird. Maybe we can work out a deal with some Central American countries and actually get them revitalized to such an extent that people don't start fleeing there and try and get into the United States illegally. That would be pretty wonderful. Don't build in China. We'll build other places. We will teach people how to build the products that we utilize. And they will have a quality of life 10,000 times better than they do today. Oh, it'll take time. Sure. But if China is not taught that there are consequences for actions, China will think there are no consequences for actions. I don't know why anybody would allow such a thing. I don't know how we could abide by such a thing. And if I don't hear presidential candidates speaking about this, then you ain't really serious about being president and leader of the free world. I'm Tony Katz, and this is Tony Katz Today.
But we're also going to place strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you from your political beliefs, what they do. They want to debank you, and we're going to debank. Think of this. They want to take away your rights. They want to take away your country. The things they're doing, all electric cars, give me a break. If you want an electric car, good. But they don't go far. They're very expensive. They're going to be made.
Now, I will admit that was not a well put together statement by the former president in New Hampshire. But if you don't understand the concept of what he's referring to, you have not been paying attention. Just like they made moves, well, if a sporting goods store is selling firearms, we have to, in credit card purchases, have that denoted as a firearms purchase. Why? You go to XYZ sporting goods store and you buy sporting goods. Does it matter? Does the government need to know whether it's a football or a baseball or a shotgun? You filled out the forms. You did everything Hunter Biden didn't do. You went back through the background check. You bought the firearm. Why does there have to be a separate category? This is the same conversation regarding a digital currency. Tony Katz Today. Good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. The phone number 833-468-8669. 833-GOT-TONY. Debanking is the idea of, you're buying too much of this. We can't be servicing your account. Oh, you said this on social media. We can't be servicing your account. Well, we don't agree with that. We can't have you as a customer here. You can only say the things that we approve of and be a customer here. A digital currency is the idea that you no longer have cash, which is weird because right now I'm the only person I know who has cash. I am the only person, I know one other, who carries cash. And people are saying, no, I don't carry cash. Who carries cash? I don't think men are men who don't carry cash. I have friends who don't do it, and they are friends, but they should know, and I have told them directly, I look at them differently. I do. I think it is ridiculous that men don't carry cash. It is mind-boggling to me. But if you have a centralized digital currency, we're not talking about Bitcoin here. That's a decentralized currency. If you have a centralized currency, digital currency, then the federal government at any moment can decide, oh, no, you've purchased enough ammunition this month. this year, well, you can't buy that candy bar because we noticed on your digital medical records that your triglycerides are high. So, nope, you can't have that. It's always the way it is. Anytime you give government power over your life, they will exercise it. Why? Because that's standard operating procedure. This conversation that Trump is having, and admittedly he had it poorly there, is about whether or not one is willing to accept the fact that one cannot change some of the basic functions of man. This is why I disagree with all socialists, and I recognize them as wrong. Someone asked on social media, did I, Tony Katz, meaning me, did I call Chinese people animals? And the answer is no, but I did call the Communist Chinese Party animals. I did call communists animals. I no fear, no shame. Commies are terrible, disgusting people who believe that they can engineer society through might, through the barrel of a gun. And the only thing they can do is inspire a prayer for a quick and painless death. They have no society that thrives. Well, what about China itself? China's not a thriving society. China utilized the ability to manufacture, to create itself wealth, but never once gave freedom to the people. As a matter of fact, as they watched communism fall and they watched authoritarians fall, they said, let us not open ourselves up to Western civilization. Let us be more rigid in our desires for communism. And while there were many people like me in the 1990s who figured that you could get them to wear blue jeans and open up McDonald's, they saw it differently. And anybody who now thinks you can get them to open up and westernize doesn't understand what is happening. It is about the control. So even if you were to talk about, look how many people they pulled out of poverty, take a look at their economy today. Take a look at their jobs numbers today. They admitted to a GDP of 5.2%. That's outrageously low for them. And in every single situation, China lies. The Communist Chinese Party lies about what they're doing and how they're doing it. You have massive amounts of unemployment, especially amongst young people. And so great is this unemployment that they have given up. They move literally to artist communes to try and find themselves because their lives have no purpose. Everything is mandated, everything is fixed, everything is the government. There is no spark to create the mind, so they actually look for ways to do it. They don't make any money at it. They can't make any money at it. There are no prospects for a romantic future. There are no prospects for an economic future. It is just listlessness. The people have become the ghost cities that have been built, one after another, with 12 skyscrapers and 17 airports. There are areas of China that have a per capita income that is less than the minimum wage in the United States in many places. Yet they'll have 5, 6, 7 airports in that region. Who's flying there? Who can afford to fly out? They built the airports because they had to do something to give all these people jobs. And the money was coming in like it was going out of style. The money was coming in so fast, you would have thought the Communist Chinese Party had an OnlyFans page. The money was just pouring in. They had to do something with it. So they built ghost cities. So they built these multiple airports. So they built 12 bridges. So they built 17 train systems. And nobody used them. And now they're tearing them down. They did what Japan did, and it led to decades of stagflation. Add to that China's problem with population, 1.4 billion people, but they put through Maui one-child policy. They killed the women, and now they don't have enough people. And now they don't have enough young people to satisfy all the older people who are engaging retirement. So all the promises from Xi Jinping, dear leader of the Communist Party, will be for naught. The people will do it less and less, and the ones who get uppity and complain will end up dead. So when I call the Communist Chinese Party animals, something tells me I'm underselling it. The Chinese population is scheduled in 100 years to go to under 800 million. No, wait. Was it under 500 million? No, sorry. It was under 500 million. They're going to lose almost 1 billion people. They're going to lose 800 million people. They'll go to 500 million. They're at 1.3, 1.4. That's it. That's it. It gets so confusing. You move it here, you move it there. It's not because China's going to kill all those people in the interior of the country so they don't have to feed them, although that's always possible. It's that the population's going to die out, and there's no population to replace it. And you can't just create Chinese people. You can't do it through immigration. It's not the way it works. China is not an example of thriving under communism. It is an example of exactly what happens in a totalitarian regime. They killed themselves, and we're all going to watch them die. Not because we want to, but because that's what's going to happen. That's what poor planning does. That's what not being a free society does. If you aren't able to purchase what it is you want to purchase, with the government looking over your shoulder and saying, do we approve this purchase? Well, then you don't live in a free society. And a society that says you engage in a way we find appropriate. Otherwise, we won't let you bank with us, and you won't have a bank account. And then you can't have a credit card, and then you can't do this, and then you can't rent a car. That's not a free society either. That is not a civil society. People think civility is please and thank you. No, civility is not forcing people to succumb to your political whims or cutting them off from their livelihoods. That's civility. Not killing your enemy. On the subject of killing, the Attorney General Merrick Garland made a statement today that is going to make your blood boil. And in this situation, we're not talking about him or Joe Biden or his attack on parents. We're talking about Uvalde. We're talking about the shooting that took place where police did not go in. Police did not. This was Robb Elementary School. Children were killed, and the police stood there doing nothing. Nothing at all. Of course, cops needed to be fired everywhere. The police chief, Arredondo, he eventually resigned in disgrace, right? Doing nothing. They let these kids die. That's what happened. Well, the investigation seems to be done. And Merrick Garland pulled, to his credit, seems to have pulled no punches.
Law enforcement officers from different agencies who had self-deployed to the scene in overwhelming numbers were themselves waiting for leadership decisions about how to proceed. Many officers reported that they did not know who, if anyone, was in charge, what they should do, or the status of the incident. Some officers were confused about why there was no attempt to confront the active shooter and rescue the children. Some officers believed the subject had already been killed, or that law enforcement was in the room with the shooter. 75 minutes after the first officers arrived on scene, officers finally entered room 111. The subject engaged the entry team with gunfire, and the officers responded with fire. 77 minutes after the first officers arrived on the scene, and after 45 rounds had been fired by the active shooter, the shooter was killed. The massacre at Robb Elementary shattered families throughout this community and devastated our country.
Our police not doing their job. Parkland? Was that Sheriff Israel? At Parkland? Those officers didn't do their job. And there are plenty of moments where they do. And they deserve our respect and deserve our love. But when they don't, they deserve to be vilified. Not that they might fail at the task, but that they refused to do the task at all. It's a scathing bit of reporting here, or the report. It is. Keep it here. This is Tony Katz Today. So I reported earlier this week, heck, it could have been yesterday, I don't even remember, that Brad Chambers, candidate for governor, Republican nominee, or no, he's not, he's searching to be the Republican nominee, he had raised $8.2 million since July. And I thought that number was staggering, and I asked the question, wait, does that include money he put in? Yes, it included a $5 million loan he gave himself at the start of the campaign, which would still mean he raised $3.2 million, which is still pretty impressive. Tony Katz Today, good to be with you. Find everything at TonyKatz.com. Over there at the Indianapolis Business Journal, Peter Blanchard reporting, they've got the numbers. All the reporting is in, and this primary, people are going to spend some loot. They're going to spend a crazy amount of money. So here's where it is. You've got Mike Braun raising approximately $2.1 million in the second half of the year. His campaign reporting more than $4 million cash on hand. He raised more than $4.3 million in 2023. So Braun has raised more money, as is reported, than any of the 5 candidates seeking the Republican nomination. Of course, Mike Braun, your current U.S. Senator. Then you've got Brad Chambers, the former Secretary of Commerce in Indiana. Then you have Suzanne Crouch, the sitting Lieutenant Governor. You've got Eric Doden, businessman out of Fort Wayne, and Curtis Hill, the former Attorney General of Indiana, who had to leave the accusations of impropriety. But he has got the social conservatives fairly well wrapped up, certainly the activist class. Brad Chambers, as we said, ends with $2.9 million cash on hand. If he gave himself a $5 million loan, he raised $3.2. Chambers has spent over $5 million so far. And that, of course, is he's got to get the name ID. Of all these people, he probably, maybe Doden, he's got the lowest name ID. People don't necessarily know who the Secretary of Commerce is. It's just not something that you know. So he has spent money doing that. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Governor Crouch, can we discuss the fact that this woman can fundraise? Look, I think she has got the worst path going forward. Too tied to Eric Holcomb, which doesn't win you anything, and I don't think there's an excitement there. Now, everything can be wrong. It's my take. I look forward to sitting down and speaking with her. She reports more than $3.7 million cash on hand. So what did they raise? She raised $2.4 million in 2023. She had $1.2 million basically on already. So she's got $3.7 million ready to go. That does not mean she had necessarily a good raise in the second half of 2023. If you take a look at Eric Doden, and here's a great example. He's got just over $1 million cash on hand, which is not enough. He raised $400,000 in the second half of 2023 and $2.2 million for the entire year, which means when the competition started being noted, it would seem to me that the money dried up. Now, I've only met the man once. He was certainly very nice to me, but very often people are very nice to me because they want nice things said on radio. They should know that it doesn't necessarily work like that. When I say necessarily, it doesn't work like that. I discussed the thing as I discussed the thing, but dude was totally nice. But that's a story. That is a story. He spent $4 million in 2023, did Eric Doden, trying to get some name ID, because outside of Fort Wayne, he doesn't really have it. And I don't think that it has necessarily worked. Then there is the former Attorney General, Curtis Hill. He raised just shy of $400,000 in 2023, most of it in the second half of the year after he announced his candidacy. Now I have a question of how much he has on hand. You have Jennifer McCormick, the Democrat nominee for governor, raising $150,000 in the second half of the year, bringing her year-end total to $450,000. Donald Rainwater, the Libertarian, raising less than $20,000 since entering the race, reports $13,000 cash on hand. Leave it to the Libertarians to still not be serious about funding candidates. Sorry, Libertarians, you're not serious. The money's not there. You have not yet broken through on this. I want you to because I like the idea of it. I do. But it's you're not there yet. 4 years we haven't engaged any breakthroughs in fundraising at all. Meanwhile, these numbers are pretty big. And you'll note Curtis Hill has the least amount of money. I get that, but I have a theory. And the theory goes as follows. He may have less money, and he'll always have less money. But when you have the activists, you have a chance. And I wouldn't be surprised if Curtis Hill is the second last man standing against, well, right now I would, see, I don't want to make assumptions like that because now I'm kind of showing my hand. I think Doden has a real issue with name ID and money to be able to make that name ID happen. I think Suzanne Crouch has the biggest issue regarding a connection to Eric Holcomb. That would leave Braun and Chambers, who are also the two biggest money guys. It's very possible it's one of those guys in Curtis Hill at the end because Curtis Hill is the only one who can survive without all the money, although the money matters. We shouldn't lie to ourselves. How much is going to get spent here? A lot. The candidates have raised $18 million so far. And we're just going to get into it. Like the campaign, it's January, kitten. It's just starting. It's going to be kind of a fascinating race. And the question is, how abused and beaten up will a candidate be out of the primary for a general, where Republicans will have attacked each other that they're doing the job for Democrats in the Oppo research. When you have money like this, they're spending it, but the people going after you are going to save it. You get that point, right? I figured you would. Good Lord. Find everything at TonyKatz.com, TonyKatz. Get the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast, and of course the videos. TonyKatz.com, Rumble, or YouTube, wherever it is you get the videos. Go check those out. Go subscribe. I will catch you tomorrow, everyone. Take care.